Hey everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
How's it going?
Welcome.
I just want to say for anyone that's listening to this, we've been kind of geeking out about food behind the scenes, and I think we shall probably continue to do that from here on out. So, this is going to be like a chat between four people that love food and magic, and everybody else is invited to listen. Is kind of how it's going to work, I think. All right, should we get started?
Yeah. Do we want to start with introductions?
Yeah, sure. You want to go first, Brandon?
Sure. So I'm Brandon Weston. I'm author of Ozark Folk Magic, right here, Plants, Prayers, and Healing. So my background is spiritual healing traditions, magical traditions that originate specifically in the Ozark Mountain region. And my connection to food is, food is the heart of the Ozarks. Our magic is based in lots of very simple practices based in the home, practices based in, work around the home, and cooking is one of those big areas. So magic is kind of incorporated into a lot of what I do and a lot of what I cook at home. So I am excited to see other people's perspectives about food magic. I'm happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Laurel Woodward, author of Kitchen Witchery. This is my first book. I'm a solitary practitioner with a nature-centered practice living in the Pacific Northwest. I've always enjoyed cooking, but I came to the practice of ritual cooking later in my practice. It took a gentle awakening to understand that magic isn't only locked in big ritual, but waits in the everyday moments if we come to them awake and aware. And it was when I embraced the magic of the mundane that my life truly became magical.
Okay. Hi. I'm Raechel Henderson. I am the author of, and I forgot to bring my books to show off. Of So Witchy, which is a book on sewing magic, and then my most recent, which is The Scent of Lemon and Rosemary, which is a book on it's been described as a witchcraft home economics book, which I love that idea. So it's about working with Hestia, who is the Greek goddess of the hearth, and working magic in the home environment to make it a safe, comforting place to be. And so that does include, there's chapters on kitchen witchery and cooking. That's not the entirety of it, but that's kind of where I come from. It is the idea of using food as a way to bring comfort and safety into your home.
And I'm Gwion Raven. Real quickly, I'm from London, England originally. I live in Northern California with redwoods and oceans and ravens and crows and my incredible partner, Phoenix. As far as food is concerned, look, I just love being in the kitchen and I love eating food. And if I can combine those things with magic, well, then just why not? So my magical practice, I sort of describe it as I've been initiated into several different traditions. They're all wonderful, but really it's the stuff of waking up in the morning and doing stuff throughout the day and finding the magic in it that just absolutely just fills me with joy almost every day. Great question. Who wants to take this one? It says a bit of introductory information. What exactly is food magic, and can anyone be magical in the kitchen? All right, who wants to take it? Brandon, is that you?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, it's a big question, but Ozark folk magic is, it's based in a lot of simple, not simplistic concepts. The idea of repurposing household duties and objects from around the house in your magic. So yeah, anybody can be magical in the kitchen. I've met, some of the most magical praying grannies in the Ozarks that I've met. They work their magic in the food that they make. So they'll pray over cornbread or over sweet tea that they make and things like that. And so from my perspective, food magic is really, it's focusing on one hand on the specific ingredients that might bring magical correspondences into the dish or whatever you're making. But for me, more than that, it is using whatever it is you're cooking as a vehicle for your intention, for your magic.
Right.
So
yes.
Whether it is just, praying over a batch of cookies, or, using food as offerings, things like that. I think that food magic is, cooking itself is magic, and the intention that we bring into it, that really helps connect us to those really important magical traditions, even though we may not call them magic.
Brenda, can I tell you a quick story that kind of sort of is like Granny's praying over cookies, but it's a little bit more risque than that?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I was at camp. It was a witch camp, right? So there's 100 witches out in the redwoods. Absolutely amazing. And a dear friend of mine invites me into the kitchen and says, we're going to make love cookies. And I'm like, great, that sounds good. So it's this big batch of cookies that everybody's making in these giant stainless steel bowls. Part of the magic is, because they're very sort of, sexy, fun, lovey cookies, everyone has to be naked from the waist up. And as you can imagine, in the kitchen, that's not always the safest thing to do. But so there we are, all naked from the waist up at least. And we're like elbows deep in this cookie mix. And the whole time we're singing the names of lovers and friends and people that we have platonic love for and people that we have, intimate love affairs with, just anything, singing songs about Aphrodite. Like, it's all going in this mix. And I tell you, people get these cookies and we say, these are love cookies. And they say, well, those sound nice. And we're like, yeah, there's some magic in them. And they're like, okay. And then they start eating them. And before you know it, people are like running off into the woods. It's absolutely brilliant. So a little bit more active than praying over it, but it's the same method.
Wonderful.
It's the same idea behind it,
Yeah. Raechel, what's food magic to you?
It was interesting, Brenda, bringing up the grannies praying and everything, because the households that I grew up in, like I have my great grandmother, she grew up in the Depression, and so passed on to like my grandmother a very frugal attitude towards everything. But like my grandparents had a huge garden that every year they would gather all the crops in, and just spend like a week canning tomatoes and green beans and all this. And they'd have big food lockers that then they had all this canned food, jarred food that anybody in the family, you would come over to grandma and grandpa's and that you'd get sent home with jars of food, just kind of as a supplement. But this idea that food is something that we need to nourish us physically, and that you can the digestion and everything that goes, that's a reaction, that's a form of alchemy. And then including your magical intentions, being mindful of what you're choosing and all that. It's one of those ways that you really can include magic into your everyday life. It's not like a ritual. It's not like something that's separate. This is something that is required for you. So having, putting in those intentions in, it just kind of makes sense. It's one of those things that I think, one of the reasons why kitchen witchery tends to be as big as it is because it's, not only do you feel like you're making, you can, make your soup and you're like, oh, potion, I'm making my potion and stuff. Mm-hmm. But you're also, you got to make food, you got to eat. Mm-hmm. Why not bring some magic into it? And it's one of the easiest ways to include magic in your life.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Laura?
I'm also linked to it through my garden. Up here, gardening is a big community. Everyone gardens up here. And we share our produce. My neighbor 2 doors over just gave me a whole bunch of persimmons that I'm excited to use. Mm-hmm. And I have apple and pear and plum trees and hazelnuts, besides my summer vegetable garden that I always have. And just getting the link with the seasonal energy and bringing it into the kitchen is magical for me. Just that. Eating squash in the summer and coming up with different recipes because you've had your 40th squash, in the month, and, trying to find something new to do with it, or sharing with overabundance, trying to give away the zucchini that you have coming out all over your counters and everywhere. Pumpkins was a bonus year this year. I have 21 pumpkins sitting around.
Oh,
and I just love that. I love the bounty of the earth and the forming a relationship with the plants and learning how they grow. That's how I came to my craft, really, was I made a relationship with my garden. And as I started learning about plants and their histories and lore, I was just fascinated. And it brought me into a magical path.
That's fabulous. All right. I'm not exactly sure if we're supposed to wait for questions from the moderator, so I'm just going to dive in and ask.
You're perfect.
Yeah,
Go
just
for
let
it.
it right
Yeah,
ahead.
no.
Why not, right?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So one of the things that we were asked to talk about were like magical spells or Yuletime spells, right? So I'm going to share one of mine. It comes with a little bit of a story, and then I'll turn it around to each one of you. Does that work? Yeah?
Yeah,
okay.
sure.
Right. So for those of you that can see the chat, I am posting a link in the chat to a blog that I wrote recently about this particular recipe. So you can get all the details of the recipe there. But simmer pots or potpourri, right? A lot of people make them. You take, flowers and herbs and spices and whatnot. Sometimes you put, especially this time of year, you put red wine in it, mulled wine, makes the house smell lovely. I have to tell you, I love those, and I put them on, and then 4 hours later, I've forgotten about them, and now I've got a burnt, sludgy mess. My house doesn't smell like cinnamon and cloves. It smells like burnt leaves. So after years of ruining pots, I said to myself, I love the colors. I love the smells. Maybe I should make some food instead of leaving a simmer pot simmering away for hours. So oddly enough, I love red cabbage. I love braised red cabbage. So that's the same color, right, as mulled wine. It's that deep reddy purple color. So what I do is I braise the cabbage, and in the cabbage, I put orange zest and cinnamon sticks and star anise and cloves. Now, what I do is I put the cloves and star anise and cinnamon sticks in a little bouquet garni, which is very French and very cool sounding. Basically, it just means a piece of cheesecloth with a bit of string on it to keep all the ingredients from dissipating. And if you don't have those fresh ingredients, you can totally just use like powdered star anise and powdered cinnamon. That's perfectly fine. But anyway, you make this braised cabbage with a little bit of red wine, a little bit of vinegar, and those spices, and a whole kitchen after an hour. The whole thing only takes an hour. The whole kitchen smells amazing, and it's delicious. And then you stick it in a big bowl, or I do, stick it in a big bowl, more orange zest over the top. And then I put a big knob or two of butter, because butter is just amazing. If you're vegan, there's vegan options, but you put the butter and it just kind of melts all yellowy and delicious and fatty all over the cabbage. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's magical for me because it's like a simmer pot that I can eat. So that's my spell, my recipe. The spell, it's abundance. Think about all those spices, right? The cinnamon and cloves. A lot of those have to do with abundance and wellness and health. So I mix all of that when I'm stirring the cabbage, and then I can eat it with my roast beast. If I'm doing that, you can eat it with vegetarian dishes. I put it on toast in the morning. I sometimes just don't share it with anybody else and eat the whole thing myself. So anyway, the recipe is in that link. Feel free to take a look at it. That's my little spell.
Delicious.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I've got to admit, I can eat it all year long, but this time of year, it looks really festive. Brandon, I'll keep going to you because you're next to me in the little break.
That's fine.
So what's your spell for Yule or solstice or Christmas or whatever you do?
Well, mentioning the simmer pot, that as far as my family goes, like I have such fond memories of those simmer pots. Like my parents, the house I grew up in had a wood stove that pretty much stayed warm all winter, even if it was just some coals. And so there's a designated simmer pot, a designated aluminum pot just for simmer pots. We don't cook in it. We don't do anything with it. It is just put on the wood stove during the winter time to have a simmer pot, and you add things and then take stuff out when it gets too strong and stuff like that.
See,
so that has always been like such a strong association for me. And also, just the idea of, mixing in these sort of warming spices to help warm the house, magically warm the house, bring in some, nice feelings in the dark time of the year, that sort of thing. One of the other big traditions that I've kind of tried to carry on this time of the year, I always remember, we would make all of this food. And like I said, Ozark folk culture is all about food, really, food and music. And so, just like all of these Ozark dishes, like succotash and cornbread and all this other stuff. But while you're cooking all of this stuff, it's a ritual in and of itself, bringing together the family, bringing together people. Everyone that comes in the house would bring, like an ingredient or, get their hands into something immediately. So you're physically bringing everyone together. But I always remember whatever we were making, we would always take a little bit off and put it on a big plate. So we have little bits of everything that at the very end, we would put outside for the little people who are Ozark fairies. And so that's a tradition that I really like doing, even if I'm just cooking at home or cooking with some friends, taking a little bit from everything I cook, for Christmas or for Yule or whatever. And really the idea being that you don't want to leave out the spirits of your home, the spirits of the earth, the spirits of the land, that, as you're celebrating and partying and warming your house and everything, you want to bring in all of those beings too. So that for me, that is such a big, Christmas or winter ritual for me. And I love getting to continue that.
I love that idea.
All right, Raechel, what's your spell?
Oh, actually, it's kind of funny that we're talking about this now because I'm working on my third book, which is based on the Will of the Year and the Sobbits. And so I just finished up working on the Yule midwinter section. And like in my family, because my family was either a-religious or Baptist, and we would do the get-togethers too, not really with a lot of religious overtones or anything like that. But one of the things that we always did that I enjoyed is there would always be a bowl of mixed nuts, and you'd have the nutcracker, and so you could just help yourself. And that was the only time of year that we would ever have that. And so that's one of those traditions that I've always kept is, we have the mixed nuts. And one of the things I like to do is have shelled mixed nuts and mix them with cinnamon and sugar and just make basically candied nuts, because it's warm and it's sweet. And I've always felt like winter is the time where you eat lots of sweet things, you eat lots of warm things, because we're all supposed to hunker down. We're supposed to hunker down and put on our winter coats and put on our winter fat and just, be restful and enjoying things. So that's kind of my winter go-tos for recipes are, things like candy nuts or hot chocolate. Make yourself some hot chocolate, put a little peppermint schnapps in there, and a little whipped cream, and just watch the snow outside and be all bundled up. So I'm all for like the sweet things and the warm things.
Mm-hmm. The comfort things.
Laurel, I know we're going to get to you with the same question, but I just have to say I'm starving. I want warm nuts and simmer pots and braised cabbage. Whose idea was it to get 4 food people together on one show? This is crazy. I'm starving. All right, Laurel, what's your spell?
That's why I made sure to eat lunch.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
all the seasonal recipes, as you said, the heartier fares and such. But I also bake bread. I spend a lot of time baking bread this time of year, and it does fill the house with an amazing smell. And it's if I have somebody coming over, having a hot loaf of bread is just so easy to put out with butter, and then you can do a pile of nuts and apricots and dried cranberries, or slices of cheese with fresh apple slices and pears.
I want to come visit your house.
Pomegranate. I like having food available when people drop by. I'm one of those people who's a feeder. I'm always feeding people. I'm a Cancer sun and a Cancer moon, so, and I do kind of embody that.
All right. Interestingly enough, you know what I noticed? Almost every recipe or spell that we've talked about has talked about memory.
Yeah.
Right? Every one of them. So this is one of the interesting things I find about food magic. I have no idea if in our lifetimes or ever in human evolution, we will come up with time travel. But until we do come up with time travel, cooking is time travel, because you can stand in your kitchen and make that simmer pot, those roasted nuts, whatever it is, and are immediately back in as a 12-year-old in grandmother's kitchen, or that one trip that you took to some fabulous part of the world, or, whatever it is. So yeah, time travel. The one thing about food, I've never had a conversation about food with any cook or chef or foodie or friend where they don't start talking about food and almost immediately tie it to memory. There's a really good question that just came up from Crow Moon that said, any suggestions for adding intentions while cooking? Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's, for me, there's no reason to cook if I'm not like stirring in an intention or braising an intention. I will sometimes draw like a pentacle at the bottom of the pot in oil before I start cooking in it. I think about who I'm cooking it for, right? So
yes.
If I'm making chicken soup because somebody isn't feeling really well, the whole time I'm mixing the soup, I am stirring it. Depending on what I'm going to do, I might stir it clockwise to bring in good health. I might stir it counterclockwise to push the virus or the illness out. But I think about what is the highest good of this chicken soup. I want the person that's eating it to know that they are loved because I'm making them chicken soup. I want them to know that they are taken care of and they can rest because I've got the house taken care of while they're resting. I want them to get the salt and the nutrients and the broth and the collagen and, all the other things that are nutritionally in that soup. And then I also want them to understand some magic, that we're going to do some deep healing magic. I find that if we all enter into the magic with the same kind of intention, it makes it stronger. And cooking is the best way to do that. Think about whatever you're going to do for Yule or Christmas, right? You want the new year to be wonderful. That's an intention. So every time you pop open a bottle of champagne, every time you pour a cocktail, every time you eat a cookie and you toast to the blessing of the new year, that's an intention.
Or to make everybody get along if it's a family gathering.
Yeah, everybody get along. Yeah. That's when you have a lavender simmer pot, right? Or something with nice plumbing stuff in it. Yeah.
And you can start before you even get to the cooking too. I mean, you can start with your the ingredients you choose, the recipe you choose. Like, I have my recipe book, which is mostly just printouts from recipes I found on the internet or stuff I've written down, and I'll have on the side there, I'll write down, okay, this has onions and garlic and these spices, and that's what these all mean. That way, if ever I'm like, I need something for this result, let's flip through my cookbook and find something with those results and see what it is. But the other thing too is even just like preparing your ingredients, like when you're chopping them up,
Yes.
if you're preparing stuff to freeze, like, you know, you're chopping up your onion that you're going to stick in the freezer, you're chopping up your carrots or whatever. And as you're doing that, thinking, this is prosperity. This is preparation. I am going to have stuff that's going to, my fridge is full. My freezer is full. I'm always going to have food there. Or when you're putting your groceries that you've picked up and you're putting them in the pantry, my pantry is full. I have what I need. So it's, you know, it's, again, one of those things where cooking magic is one of the easiest magics people can engage in, because you're already doing this stuff. Then it's just bringing your intentions into that and being mindful as you're doing things.
I begin by writing my intention at the top of the recipe. And then as I measure and chop and stir, and I even, like you were saying, you use your voice. I tell each ingredient what I want it to do as I add it to the recipe. Food magic is a very easy way to engage in the process.
There's a chapter in my book, The Magic of Food, which is called Sing to Your Food. And I really do. I sing to my food, right? And it's those things, right? It's like, this soup is delicious. It's going to taste great. It's ridiculous stuff. It's not like I have like ancient Latin magical chants. It's just me singing about this chicken looks delicious. It's going to taste great. It's going to heal everyone that eats it.
Sometimes it's me. It's happy. Everybody's going to be happy.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I just had a couple things that came to mind. So you were talking, Gwion, about the spoons, and this is I come from a real crafting culture, so lots of things are homemade, hand carved, things like that. And so amongst healers I've met, spoons are really important, and people will carve different woods for different intentions and things like that. So they may have, like an oak spoon for strength and prosperity and stuff like that. Or they may have, sassafras is a big plant around here that's used in a lot of magical medical traditions. And so a sassafras spoon for, sort of healing lots of different things and protection and exorcism and stuff like that. And then one other thing that came to mind is, we're talking about cooking for, bringing the family together and, happiness and the hearth and home and things like that. And for me, one of the fun things I found amongst healers that keep a lot of recipes and things around is when healers want to cook against their enemies, or, doing some retribution work with food. I met this very sweet old lady who, she would always bake pies for the church potluck and things like that. And there were times where, she would put a lot of love into those pies, but then there were times where she would read some cursing Bible verses over the pies for, if she wanted to get back at some people, or, if people weren't treating her right, things like that. So I think food can carry so many different intentions, not just healing. Most of the cooking that I do with magical intention is healing and things like that. But, cooking for love, like you were talking about, Gwion, earlier, just, cooking for love magic or prosperity, or, maybe some of the retribution work as well. So it's all about your intention going.
I haven't done the retribution work, but I do use sweetening. And yesterday I made 5 almond cakes and gave them out to my neighbors.
Yeah, that's a really good way to do it. And you're right. Let's be clear. I'm not advocating this, but you can put some nasty stuff inside of a pie and nobody will ever know. Depending on what you're doing. But it's true. I mean, food, you can use food in other ways, right? Like if anyone's familiar with like hot foot powder, right? Anything like that. It's a lot of like black pepper and hot spices and things like that. So, you can definitely use food for other magic as well. Keep in mind, food is often medicine. And medicine is, one extra dose here or there, and it becomes poison pretty quickly, right?
Yeah,
so
that's true.
That's an important thing to know. But don't serve people raw chicken. I'm just saying, just want to advocate for that really nicely.
So we've got some other questions here about working kitchen magic differently in the past couple years, if we're doing that with different intentions, and not so for me, but that's no, I don't. I think I've mostly just I've spent the last year and a half with kids at home for remote learning, so it's been a lot of snacking, been a lot of chips, a lot of that sort of thing. But has anybody else found that their cooking has been different over the last couple
Now
years?
I say that, yes. My cooking magic, if I look back, it used to be more for a prosperity. And since this whole crazy world pandemic stuff has been happening, it's mostly more for wellness. You know, mental wellness and just wellness in general.
I'll tell you, somebody asked a similar question. Melissa asked about selfish cooking. You know, like what traditions you bring into the kitchen for meals or snacks that are about self-care, right? So here's one that I love to do. So I like lamb, right? I enjoy eating lamb, but nobody else in my family likes it. And so every now and again, I will take myself on a date for one, the perfect date for me. And often that involves going to the shop, buying food that I really like, or buying the ingredients to make food that I really like, and then putting on the music that I want to listen to, opening the bottle of wine that I really want to drink that I've been saving, and cooking a meal that is entirely for me. If I was taking myself on a date and I wanted to get lucky with myself later on that evening, this is what I'd cook. And there are lots of different ways that you can do that. But I think that's really important. It is a big part of self-care. And for me, over the last couple of years, that's really been the key. I'm not shy about mentioning this. I am someone for whom depression is a regular visitor, and that really makes things difficult, and it can be really paralyzing for me. And so one of the ways that I can help often get through a depression is to say, what is my body craving right now? What will bring me joy from food in this moment? And I'll go make that thing or buy that thing. And so that's something that's really changed over the last few years because I couldn't go out to restaurants, because I couldn't go out and gather with friends. I had feasts for one, and they were brilliant.
I sometimes make dark chocolate treats just for myself.
I really I don't like this idea that it's selfish to take care of yourself, mostly because you know, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself as well. And oftentimes you have to take care of yourself first, especially if you are taking care of other people. So like as a mother, I have to make sure that I'm taken care of. Otherwise, how can I care for my kids? So when like I was kind of a little cringy about the fact that it's like a lot of chips and stacking, it's because that's what our family needed at the time. Like, yes, it's you know, I try to be make homemade food and make sure we're eating healthy and stuff. But the last 18 months, what we needed is just to make sure that we had stuff that made us feel good and helped carry us through. Because I have the same, I suffer from, or I live with depression as well. So yeah, sometimes you have to take care of yourself, and that's not selfish. That's giving yourself the same sort of care that you would give your loved ones.
You know, the root of the word selfish is self. And if I'm not taking care of myself, that's really where selfishness starts, right? So like I love everybody in my family, well, except for that one relative, and they know who they are. But I have to be first. That doesn't mean I'm always first. It doesn't mean that it's to the exclusion of other people. But you're right. If I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of anybody else.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. 2020, I lived by myself. It's just me and my cat. So the entire year, more than a year, it was just me at home. And I had lots of grand sort of aspirations to learn how to start baking and break out the Julia Child cookbooks that I've got, and like, you know, all of this other, and none of that happened, obviously. But I did cook more just because, you know, I had to. And so I started, which it's a good thing I live by myself because people would have thought I was completely insane. But what I wanted to start doing was every meal that I cooked, I set my entire table with different place settings. I used the best china that I've got, family china. I used all of this special stuff. And I had a meal, not just for myself, but I wanted to have a meal with the dead. And that's what I did. And so that's a tradition that I keep going. I don't do it every day anymore, but I do it once a week where I set the table and I make a big meal and I just invite anybody that wants to come get nourishment from the spirit world can just come and do that. And that was a tradition that I never really thought I would develop, but it just kind of happened naturally at the time. And I think that was one of the most influential traditions that I developed, but definitely changed the way I view cooking. And now, even if I'm just making my lunch or a snack or something, as I'm cooking, I'm thinking, whoever needs some of this nourishment, may you come and find it too. As my body's being nourished, may your body be nourished as well. And so it was a really simple practice, but for me has been a really influential and profound practice to be able to kind of share that food with not just yourself, but everything.
I agree. I just a few years ago started doling out the first portion to my household spirit. And it not only fed the connection of the relationship, but it just seemed to awaken the spirit of the house more. But I talk to the house when I come in and when I leave, and I'm a bit nutty that way. But
no, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, makes sense to everybody here. So the good folks at Llewellyn said, on a final note, because we're running out of time, what is one thing, yes, just one thing, that we want folks to know about working with food magic this Yule season? It's simple. Do it. Mm-hmm. Every meal, every drink, every cocktail, everything you make, everything anyone makes for you, give a moment right before you put it in your mouth. Just give a moment of gratitude for the life you have today and for the people that gave you that food or bought you that food or made you that food, and then enjoy it. Chew it slowly. It's the best. That's for me.
I think for me, it's really important, going back to the idea of feeding not only yourself, but the spirits and the entities around you is, take time to not only give to yourself and to your loved ones, but give to people who are less fortunate, to spirits who are less fortunate, to land that's less fortunate. This last year, one of my favorite forested areas got turned into a parking lot. So every so often I take a plate of food out and leave it in that space for the birds that are still there, the squirrels that are still there, things like that. Sad. So, give to yourself, give to your loved ones, but give to the ones that are forgotten as well. Raechel,
okay.
Anything?
I'm going to speak up then. Don't be afraid to try stuff. Be adventurous. Also use salt.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. You can cook with love as a spice, but you need to season with some salt.
Love's a nice ingredient, but it doesn't always taste good.
Right.
How about you, Laurel?
I'm sorry. What was the
one last thing that we want people to know about cooking or eating food magic this Yule?
Oh yeah, just start with an intention. Start with your intention and then speak it to the food. Work it into the food. Anytime that you go to make a conscious creation, you can make magic no matter what the medium.
Great discussion. Loved it.
Yeah,
wish
we
could talk about it. Wish we could talk about it all day long, but unfortunately. And thanks to the audience too. Great audience.
Yeah, thank you for all the comments and the questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.